Hello there everybody, Sabaranai2 aka Nightmare, and welcome back to the house in Fata Morgana, the dreams of the Revenant. Or, I guess, to shorten it up, I guess we could just go ahead and refer to this as Reincarnation. Last week, we pretty much got started on this, and the past couple days, I have felt the mansion calling to me. Anyway, I asked you guys about, since this game has some voice acting in the Reincarnation chapters, what we should do. Apparently, interestingly enough, you can actually adjust which characters' voices are speaking individually. So, what I could probably do, somebody suggested, is that for the popular characters' voices, I can kind of listen to them just for a little bit, and then turn their voices off and do all the voice acting for them, while I leave the ones that I'm not particularly the best, like Pauline, and have them have their lines voiced. Admittedly, it's going to be kind of weird doing partial voice acting, but if anything, I still want to at least listen to some of the characters' voices for certain lines, and, well, let's be fair. If I got the chance to voice Michel or Morgana, I do want to take that opportunity. Even Jacopo, for God's sakes.
Or perhaps even Yukimasa if he actually shows up in the Reincarnation.
But anyway, let's do this. So last week we dealt with Pain, and we got to see a darker side of Giselle that I was not expecting. Like, that was incredibly dark, seeing her become a witch, that her loneliness and her pain outweighed Morgana's hatred. Holy crap. Giselle, the Witch of Desolation. Ugh. And yes, it is confirmed that that little girl that was with Michel was Giselle, and oh my god! Oh, that is so cheesy and cute. Ugh. And I realized that it was quite a hell of a juxtaposition. You got to see Giselle in an incredibly dark moment, and then we finish it off with, like, being given the sweetest of candies at the end of it. Needless to say, it certainly did feel like a bit of a juxtaposition, it kind of out there. So anyway, let's begin on the next story, which is Silent Night, Lonely Night. Oh, Michel! Please. Silent night, lonely night. Michel was even gloomier than usual. His ruby eyes gazed down at a letter from his mother. If it were a year prior, he would have been crying or shouting or throwing furniture, but nowadays... Oh, wait, is this Giselle's perspective?
I rarely saw him explode at anything, and I preferred him this way. Getting loud and emotional over every little thing was what ordinary men did. But beneath Michel's gypsum skin flowed blood divine as mine. He was above them, and it did not befit him to behave as they did.
Or wait. Beneath gypsum skin flowed blood divine as mine. Brooding in silence was much more appropriate. Until I can actually learn exactly whose perspective this is, I'll just go with my standard. Brooding in silence was much more appropriate behavior. I sat at the desk beside him, my chin resting on my hand. Michel could not see me there, though. Not that I wanted to watch him grimace in disgust at the horrifying Scarlet. Morgana! Not that I wanted to watch him grimace in disgust at the horrifying... No! Not Morgana! Wait, not that he could see me there. Wait, god damn it, maybe this is Morgana. I remember that there was one other person that had scars because she was covered up in a bunch of bandages because she became a leper. But if Michel can't see him, then this is probably Morgana. In disgust at the horrifying scars on my face, of course. Michel, my dear. What? That was unexpected. He almost never responded to me anymore. Perhaps he wanted someone to speak with in his present tribulation. Michel briefly looked around the room for me, but no matter how hard he searched, his eyes would never find mine. You should hang it up, I said. Are you out of your mind?
I'm just teasing you. I gave a little laugh, agitating him further. Today his family had sent him Christmas decorations. First, a handmade, probably by his mother, white floral wreath. A lovely thing that a young girl might like.
And utterly kind of insulting toward Michel, who we know about him.
Then there was a doll in frilly clothing, also intended for a girl. I expected Michel to toss it all in the fireplace this evening, but merely destroying it wouldn't erase the fact that he'd received it. Nor that his mother would be expecting a response not from Michel, but Michel. It's kind of hard whenever they're both in the same sentence, so it's like Michel and Michel.
Despite my repeatedly asking her not to, my mother continues to send me these Christmas boxes as it gets cold. I'm starting to hate even the thought of Jesus Christ.
You should direct your anger at your family, not the Holy Savior.
Yes, I realize it's misplaced, but...
You could easily solve this with a curse. Just say the word.
And you need to stop offering me that.
As you wish. Michel had changed a great deal since his first arrival at the mansion, but that was one thing he stubbornly refused to budge on. Did he really care about his family that much? He seemed to have drawn a line in the sand and convinced himself that if he stepped over it, he would be surrendering his humanity. But what he needed to realize was that he never had any to lose in the first place, so his concern was entirely irrelevant. I forgot how to English. I would spare him that lecture today, though. He was busy racking himself over the letter and Christmas. Michel.
What?
Having grown tired of resting my chin on my hand, I was now sitting on top of the desk looking down at him. Again, he looked around for me with no luck. Tell me about Christmas. Your family lives on a rather large estate, don't they? Larger than this little mansion, at least. You don't have to if you don't want to.
It's just... talking about it when I was happy only makes me feel even worse now.
Well, I can understand that, I suppose. Michel had ever been happy? My family was too poor to put up Christmas decorations or do anything special for Epiphany. What gifts we did receive from the villagers all went straight to my mother, and I saw none of it. Though earthly desires were wrong, I believed, so I was hardly bothered by that. I was one who gave to those in need, after all. Michel, my dear.
What?
He glanced slightly upward. So close, but still not quite able to find me. Just saying your name. He appeared mildly annoyed, but didn't say anything in protest. Perhaps he thought it wouldn't make a difference, or had simply gotten used to me calling his name for the sake of it. Regardless, he reluctantly dropped his gaze back to the letter on the desk. I decided to leave him alone. He didn't seem willing to share his Christmas experiences, and I had nothing else to talk about.
Morgana.
Yes? So that caught me off guard. Michel almost never initiated. I tilted my head even though I knew he couldn't see it.
Do you
He said.
want to celebrate Christmas? Is that it?
Had he lost his mind? At what point had I ever said I wanted to celebrate the holiday? While I was busy being flabbergasted, Michel stood up and took the wreath in his hand. He then began searching the area for me.
Where are you?
Right here.
That doesn't help me. Where's your head? Am I close?
He asked, waving his hand around in the air. That's my shoulder, I said, still not certain what he was trying to do.
How about here?
A little higher.
Here?
Yes, right there. Holding one hand there in the air, he took the other, the one holding the wreath, and brought it up to the same level, placing it right above my head. An awkward silence hung in the air for a few seconds as I failed to grasp what had just happened.
Wreaths in my family were worn as headdresses. When I made one, I would place it on my mother's head like this. They're gifts for the women of the house. I'm glad you're here, so I can pretend this was a gift for you instead.
What are you...
You asked about my family's Christmas.
No, that wasn't what I meant. Why was he doing this? He went quiet for a moment, then smiled, which was all the answer I needed. It was a very self-defeating smile, not meant for me. Laughing at himself for putting so much weight on only one of the wreath's potential meanings. In sorrow for the family who refused to accept him. I made a very similar smile. Flowers would never befit me after all. Not with one arm violently severed and the other nothing but bone. I could never be the innocent little girl laughing with flowers in her hair. I have no interest in your wreath. Throw it in the fire.
That's probably for the best. Yes.
And what we learned in that moment was that Christmas would never be a happy occasion for us. That said, it was better than I'd expected, nonetheless. We shared a certain energy there, staring in silence. A solitary, capitulatory, desolate energy. Michel, my dear.
What?
I turned up to look at him, wreath still in his hands, and he looked down in one turn, this time matching my gaze exactly. He wasn't really looking into my eyes, though. He just happened to know where they were because I had told him. But I was fine with that. Would you like me to write that letter to your mother in your stead?
What do you mean?
I mean, I dictate what you will say. All you have to do is write it down and sign it, Michel. It won't be something you wrote, so I imagine doing it that way will take much of the pressure off. He didn't seem certain what to make of the proposal. I'd never suggested anything like it before, and I likely never would again.
You're going to ask me for something in return, aren't you?
Of course not. What do you think I am?
A witch.
Well, to be fair, he was right. But Michel was a saint like me, so I wasn't particularly fond of him calling me a witch. I was in a forgiving mood today, though, so I decided to let it pass. I know how to show gratitude, thank you very much. Even for a wildly ill-considered floral wreath. I was just fickle, that was all. Sometimes I would have days like this. At most, I would continue trying to bring him over to my side, to curse his family. But occasionally, I would show some kindness. Merry Christmas, Michel.
Damn. Okay, that was a short one, but interesting. Huh. That never really fully occurred to me that, or it never even came to mind, like, how their normal days of, That kind of gave me a glimpse at, despite that, there were some good moments between Michel and Morgana back whenever he was, you know, whenever he was reclused inside the mansion for all those years. Or for all that time, sorry. But, damn. Alright, what do we got here? Scarlet in the coffeehouse. Interesting. Oh! Oh boy.
Now tell me, my boy, how are things going on your end?
Asked Jacopo's good friend, chest puffed and hand stroking a triangular beard. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to react. Annoyed? Confused? Disappointed? Or as if he just stumbled upon a mythical creature.
Can I take your silences, poorly?
Are we really going to do this? Jacopo finally managed to get out. I miss this song! But not without a heavy sigh, which created ripples in the 2 cups of coffee on the table between them. What are you even doing here, Maria? Oh! was Wait, what? Yes, he was sitting across from his oldest friend, and very much a woman. Scarlet in the coffeehouse. What does it look like? Having a cup of coffee, thank you very much. Maria tilted her head, still stroking the fake beard. Maria! The fake beard. She had lowered her voice a few registers, but Jacopo could still recognize it as hers without much difficulty. I mean, who else wouldn't recognize that accent? No, I mean, coffee houses are men's establishments. What are you doing here? They were sitting in a far corner, away from most of the other customers. At the time, coffee houses were social gathering places for men, where they talk news, gossip, businesses, or anything else of interest. Really? Can somebody do like a history check on this? Because this is some interest. This is information I didn't know. Were coffee houses like specifically only allowed for men? Like were women even allowed to step in it? I'm asking because I know that this was in different time periods, so I'm actually kind of curious about this. And for an investor like Jacopo, it was a crucial part of how he did business. He had come here today to scout out opportunities, but those plans fell by the wayside when he caught sight of the small-framed man with slick-backed blonde hair. So he approached her and confirmed his suspicions that it was Maria in men's clothing. Why else would I be dressed like this? Doy. Oh, please don't tell me you've weaseled your way into this place before. Weaseling isn't a very nice way to put it. But no need to get your panties in a bunch. This is the first time. Heck, half the reason I did it was to startle you, because I thought you'd be here today. Jacopo had many questions. So many, in fact, he wasn't sure where to begin. Where had she gotten the clothes and the fake beard, for one? Wouldn't the other maids get upset at her if they found out she was here? And why had she gone to such lengths just to surprise... Hold on. You said half the reason. What's the other half? No, because I wanted some coffee. Duh. You have coffee at the mansion. I know we're not out of beans. I think? That's not the point, stupid. Coffee at a coffee house is a completely different thing. It's about the experience. And speaking of it kinda sucks. It's a real sausage party in here. That was more surprising to him than her being here. That she didn't like it here because there were only men. In his mind, and in society's eyes for that matter, that was simply what coffee houses were, and he'd never considered that as a potentially detrimental. Assuming some other maid had said the same thing to him, Jacopo probably would have lectured her about the roles of men and women in modern society and how it wasn't her place to judge men's spaces. But he considered Maria too much of a friend and an equal, and far enough detached from convention, at that he couldn't bring himself to do that to her. He also had no idea how to effectively communicate that sentiment to her. Anyway, please don't go pulling stunts like this too often. I don't want to catch any blowback. It's fine, no one caught me. Well, I caught you, Jacopo thought. Not to mention the curious glances they'd been getting the entire time he was here. If he hadn't found her out when he did, chances are she would have been thrown out by now. Oh, really? Oh, hey, Maria said, her eyes going wide. She then gave him a wink. Not unusual for her, but it looked very out of place on the not-quite-there gentleman look she was sporting. Next time I want to go, you come with me. You're the big-name investor Jacopino. No one's gonna want to get on your bad side just because you brought a chick. Excuse me? This is a place for doing business. Also, don't call me that. Yeah, you can do all the business you want. I'll listen in on your talks, and when we get back, I'll give you my thoughts. You know I'm sharp. I'm sure I could be of help. He wasn't sure if she was serious or just pulling his chain again. But, since she wasn't laughing, he decided to assume the former. So you'd be a second pair of eyes, then. You know, that's not a half-bad idea, he said with a chuckle. Maria's eyes went wide. What? I've always counted on you. What? I've always counted on you. You know that. Right. Oh, you're making me blush. Having Maria as his right-hand man would be the best for him in the long term. She was the only person he was able to really trust in this world. But it would take a lot of work to make that possible. He would need even more money, more power, and more status. Enough to resist the pressure he would undoubtedly get from all sides. Jacopo was the heir of the Berzotti family, and Maria was the sole survivor of the Campanella family. There were still countless obstacles to putting her on the same stage as him, but in a week's time, I'll be taking that first step, he thought, tilting his head back toward the ceiling. That was when Jacopo's bride-to-be was scheduled to reach the new world. Oh! This is before... Oh! Hey, Jacopo, what is it? We'll always be like this, won't we? Maria asked, looking stern in a way he almost never saw her. But before he could answer, yeah, of course we will. We'll never change, she said as if she needed some assurance. Ooh, 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 ooh. Another short story. Huh. You know, I'm kind of liking these little, even if they are pretty short, I am liking these little extra stories that they added in this. A ghost of an excuse. Oh!
I saw a ghost.
Giselle said as she entered my bedchamber. She was wearing night clothes, and the feeble light of the candle in her hand made her look more pouty than scared. I thought you didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that.
What do you want me to say? I saw what I saw.
And that was supposed to be convincing? Are you sure it wasn't something else?
I'm positive! There was a white figure going all woo, woo, woo at me in the hall.
With each ooh, she took another step toward me until she was close enough to grab me by the collar and throw me to the ground. Why did she seem angry at me, and not the white figure hooting at her in the corridor? So what do you want from me, then?
Don't make me spell everything out!
What did she expect from me? She knew I wasn't very adept at reading people. How was I supposed to know what she wanted? Wait. Slow down. It wasn't good to give up without giving it any thought. I needed to at least attempt to reason out what she may have been thinking. 1. She wanted me to exorcise the ghost. 2. She thought I was the ghost. 3. She wanted more light in the mansion. One's not reasonable. How am I supposed to exercise something that doesn't exist? 2 is out of the question. And there's only so much I can do about 3 with my supply of candles.
What are you going on about?
Crap! I've been thinking out loud. She stared up at me for a few seconds before letting out a dramatic sigh. The sigh was 98% exasperation and 2% what seemed like almost lust, but I wasn't certain.
I wanted you to offer to let me sleep with you tonight.
It took a good 15 seconds to process what she had said. After which, all I could manage to get out was a flaccid... Oh my god. Giselle's face was bright red. I was sure mine was no better. She felt warmer than usual through her night clothes. I wasn't sure if it was because the fabric was thin or she was just warm. Maybe it was both. Giselle giggled, nuzzling my neck. It was an impressively quick turnaround for someone who had been pouting at me only minutes before. In a way, it felt somewhat like having a dog or a cat. At first we were both nervous, but that quickly melted away, leaving only comfort and warmth. Body heat belonging to neither of us. Love. Sweetness. I never could have imagined the day would come where I welcomed someone else's touch as much as I did hers.
We'll get you used to this eventually.
Do you really think I'll be able to?
Of course. Before you know it, this'll be nothing.
In some ways, it's kind of sad. Oh wait, I really wish I could... Oh, okay, the first one was... Okay, fuck it. From the top. We'll get you used to this eventually.
Do you really think I'll be able to?
Of course. Before you know it, this'll be nothing.
In some ways, that's kind of sad.
Sure, it can be. But the happy will be stronger than the sad. Something becoming every day isn't a bad thing. I don't think.
I suppose.
She was probably right. Her becoming a natural part of my life was a good thing. But then the closer she got, the harder it would get to be a part of it. In time, would we get close enough that just touch was just a completely normal thing for me? Would I be comfortable touching her arms? Her lips? Would I be able to open myself up toward her entirely? And would she accept me for who I was? I hope so. To all of it.
You're so tall, Michel. It's wonderful.
Why do you say that?
Well, I'm the tallest one in my family. My big sister's so small, and she's the most precious thing in the world. I've always been jealous of her for that. Like she's more of a girl than me. I bet her wedding was absolutely lovely, too.
That's a surprise. You're perfect just the way you are, though.
Oh, really? That's not what you said when I first arrived.
I've grown. Thank you. Her breath tickled my neck as she laughed.
So I love the way I can just fit entirely in your arms.
Sorry I couldn't be buff for you, too.
But hey! You're never going to let me live that down, are you?
Just a little payback.
Oh,
She said, looking up at me and pouting. Her jade eyes seemed to glimmer even in the dark. They are beautiful. But I would keep that thought to myself. I didn't want to ruin the moment with what would sound like a cheap flirting. This glimmer was worth so much more than that. As was she. Giselle. Giselle. I'm so glad to have you in my life. Good night. Oh my God, this is gonna kill me! My heart! Oh my God, anything that involves just the sweet tenderness of Giselle and Michel, just... Oh my God. It just hits me right there, right in the heart. Oh God. Okay, I can do this. I'm probably not gonna survive this. Alright, Eternal Maze. Oh, Pauline? Eternal Maze. Are you okay, Orlando? A single flower, out of place in that den of body, odor, and booze, charged across the pub to the table at the back where he sat. She had radiant golden hair, as though she carried the sun itself on her shoulders. All the other men paused their drinking and merrymaking to get a look. The flower was out of breath by the time she reached his table. Orlando was a tall, lanky man with thin eyebrows, hardly what one might have assumed a lady as refined as her would be interested in. And the bandages wrapped around his head, covering one eye, only served to enhance the discount villain image. A man somewhere in the pub let out a whistle. "Princess and the Thief! A match made in hell!" Orlando glared over at him for a few moments before the young lady shouted, "What happened to you?" directly in his face. "Don't shout like that, Philippa. Jesus, you're trying to make me go deaf?" "Then tell me what happened. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Will it get better?" Orlando. Wait a minute. Shit. It's no big deal, really. You know what they say, scars are trophies. Yeah, you see any good eye patches on the market today? Something black would be great. Real nice and fancy. Dress it up a bit. Orlando chuckled and shrugged his shoulders. But Philippa's frown only deepened. "Do you want people to think you're a pirate and throw you into the sea?" Philippa pounded on the table in response. Wait a minute, Philippa? Wait a minute. Okay, in the span of about 30 seconds, she had gone through the entire spectrum of emotions. Sad, angry, upset, worried, and disappointed. "Listen, Orlando," she said with a sigh.
We've been together our whole lives. Don't you think you should have come to see me first? I've been worried as sick ever since I heard just how things went in Cassel. So when I saw the soldiers coming back, I just had to know you were okay. Why would you keep me waiting like that?
If Philippa was going to be this blunt, Orlando couldn't continue messing around. She stole a chair from somewhere, threw it beside him, and dropped down into it in a single action entirely unbefitting of an upper-class lady. Then she leaned in and said, So what?
So, tell me all about the battle at Cassel, in detail, to make up for all the time you made me spend worrying.
That's no fairy tale, you know. It's bloody and violent, not to mention it was a losing battle.
I still want to know,
she said, leaning in even closer, her vivid hazel eyes unflinching.
It's about you. Of course I want to know.
He dropped his shoulders and sighed, feigning defeat. Everyone at the pub knew it was an act, that Orlando had feelings for this enchanting childhood friend of his. In reality, he'd wanted to jump out of his chair and start dancing when she'd barged in looking for him. His other mercenary companions had caught on quickly to the reason he'd joined, the reason he needed the money, and they watched warmly. There was only one person there who didn't know yet, Philippa herself. But it was only a matter of time. They had been close their whole lives after all. I can't regale you with tales of valor and triumph, but if you insist, Orlando said to preface his account as his voice shifted from female to male in the span of a couple of seconds. And then he told her of their battle at Cassel, of their fallen comrades, of the state of the war. Their homeland was at war with the Western kingdoms. Battles broke out across the land, and mercenaries were hired to compensate for the lack of soldiers. Orlando grew up in a port town, but instead of becoming a fisher, he decided to take up the sword. His childhood friend Philippa chastised him repeatedly, doing everything she could to stop him from going to war. But Orlando was firm in his resolve. His first battle was 4 years ago, and he was surprised he had survived as long as he did. But now that he'd lost an eye, Orlando figured it was probably time to pack it in. He'd saved up a decent amount of money anyway. Orlando knew Philippa's parents wouldn't approve, but he was sure he had enough to convince them of his love. Because love was only second when it came to someone so far above your own status. Which is why he hadn't become a fisher. Orlando took up the mantle of a mercenary to save enough money to propose marriage to the daughter of a wealthy merchant family. That was what he lived for. Hey, Philippa. Finishing his account of the battle, Orlando straightened himself up in his seat. Philippa raised an eyebrow.
Yes? What is it?
The soldiers at the nearby table started grinning, thinking it was finally time. But he wasn't going to propose to her in a grungy pub. He was planning to invite her somewhere more fitting, when... "Greetings, brave warriors!" came a booming voice at the door. "I celebrate your fine efforts out on the battlefield, and to commemorate my crew, and I offer you these meager gifts." Orlando clicked his tongue as loud as he could manage. Why the hell did he have to show up now all the times? Standing at the door was, in Orlando's words, a yellow-skinned bastard whose face looked like a lizard crushed by a pot lid. That is one way to describe somebody. The man was the captain of a trading vessel that had quickly expanded its business over the past few years. Orlando didn't like him not only because he was an outsider, but because he had sweet-talked and bought his way into the upper crust. The man's crew carried barrels of wine into the pub, and every single soldier's face lit up, except Orlando's. He just frowned, trying to make it clear he wouldn't be bought so easily. "Oh, why hello there, Philippa! Fancy meeting you here!" Seeing the man getting friendly with her just irritated him even more, and when he walked over and put his hand on her shoulder, Orlando snapped, kicking his chair back and almost charging at the man. "Get your filthy hands off of her, you ape! Back off! Philippa's mine! We have important things to discuss right now! Get the fuck out of here, con man!" But Orlando didn't manage to say anything.
It really is quite the coincidence.
Orlando's jaw dropped. Philippa's cheeks were flushed. Her gaze turned toward her feet, her arms held straight down at her center with her fingers interlocking. He had never seen her like that before. The rough, pushy, unrefined girl she was for him was because he was just her longtime friend to Philippa. In the 4 years Orlando had spent saving up to propose, another man, wealthy by birth, had come in and beaten him to the punch. He learned that night that it was the haves who made the world go round, and it was the haves and the have-nots, like him, were only going along for the ride. Damn. As much as you may insist otherwise, you really do care, Orlando. Philippa's daughter. Oh! Ooh! There she is!
As much as you may insist otherwise, you really do care, Orlando.
Philippa's daughter, Pauline, said with a bright smile. The many years since that night had relieved Orlando of both his youth and his optimism. I feel bad enough as it is. Please don't take advantage of me, he said, his voice softer and his tone lighter now. With his life's mission ended in failure, Orlando gave up being a mercenary and took up somewhat less exciting work. Sometimes a bodyguard, sometimes just carrying boxes, but never anything terribly life-threatening.
I think I might take full advantage of this. Thanks. See you in a bit.
Pauline's smile was vibrant, something she got from her mother. Her hair was black like her father's, though. He could see both of them in her, and it tore him apart sometimes, dragging him back to his younger days. After watching her scamper off into the village, Orlando turned his head up toward the sky. Stop thinking about it. Just focus on what you have to do. He needed to convince Pauline that there was nothing to find here, then bring her back home. Philippa would be furious with him. She might even end all association with him for this. But he was not going to let her go off on this search with some stranger and get herself killed. So his only choice was to go himself and then bring her back. Orlando heaved a sigh, then headed into the village. He prayed nothing would happen to her. Oh, I know what's going to be happening. I know what place this takes place in. And now I remember that horrifying image again. You know the image I'm talking about. It took me a minute to remember. Oh, I remember Orlando! Florida! A slice of sweet serenity, of days long lost, one. All right. Oh. The Midsummer Festival was behind us, leaving only the hellish heat and none of the distractions. I've lived here in the slums long enough to not be surprised by the chaos that came with the season, but I never looked forward to it either. Particularly the smells. Mostly human smells. The alleys were where the worst of it was, and there was no peace in our little peacekeepers group when it came to decide who had to patrol them. But even down here in the foulest dregs of the city, there were small pockets of light. Hidden spots where one could enjoy the breeze without worrying about catching a surprise whiff of rotting flesh. One such oasis was a small graveyard, home to those forgotten souls who passed with no family or loved ones. It looked like little more than scattered rocks in the grass if you didn't know any better, and for the past 2.5 years, it had been tended by a single young girl by the name of Morgana. Today, as I'd almost every day since she'd come here, I headed for the graveyard. I'd been having trouble focusing recently, ever since coming face to face with my feelings for her. I made rookie mistakes in training, which invited all sorts of teasing from Gratian.
Give me a break, kid. You're even worse off than the day we met.
I wanted nothing more than to clock him square in the jaw, but I knew he was right. I wasn't myself. And of all things, it was love that was throwing me off. I could hardly believe it. Though in reality, it was less than love itself and more the age difference that vexed me. Morgana was 11 years old, still a child, and I was 21, an adult. Clearly, I was out of my mind. Something was wrong with me. I tried to talk myself out of it again and again, but the more energy I expended on the issue, the stronger the feelings became. If we were closer in age, it wouldn't have been such an issue, so why? I had no answer, though, only these feelings. And at that point, I had no choice but to accept them. I was in love with her, with a child barely half my age, no matter how mature she acted, and there was nothing I could do to change that. I knew at least that I would have to wait until she was older to tell her how I felt. I could only imagine how terrifying it would be for her to have a man twice her size and age profess his love. It was out of the question. I needed to make sure she didn't feel like I was pressuring her into anything, because that wasn't what I wanted. Why does everything have to be so difficult? The closer I got to the graveyard, the more of a disaster I felt. Obviously, I was thrilled to be able to be with Morgana. That wasn't even a question. But my own priorities were quickly shifting from keeping peace in the slums to caring for her. Thoughts of her had begun to consume my life, though I would never admit as much to her. It was the awareness that posed the biggest challenge. It changed how I looked at her, throughout everything I knew about how to act around her. And Morgana had clearly caught on to my recent uneasiness as well. The other day, after a particularly awkward conversation, she had given me this burning glare and said, "You seem on edge. What foolishness are you scheming now?" "What are you fretting over, Jacopo? Just act normal, it's not that hard. Breathe in and breathe out, breathe in and breathe out. Clear your head." I passed by a few makeshift gravestones, searching for that distinctive tattered black robe. It usually wasn't hard to find, with it mostly being grass and rocks here, but I had no such luck today. Is she not here yet? Deciding to wait for a bit, I headed toward a tree for some shade, which is where I found Morgana, her head resting against the trunk. "If you're going to sleep on the job, at least go back to the brothel and do it there," I mumbled under my breath, approaching the tree. "Hey." No response. "Morgana?" But once I got close enough, it became clear I hadn't just stumbled on her slacking off. She wasn't so much leaning against the tree. "Morgana!" as she was collapsed in front of it. I scrambled over to her, dropped to my knees and put a hand on her shoulder, causing her to topple forward, her head falling into my chest. She was burning up. "Hey, stay with me!" "Oh, it's you." Her golden eyes glanced up toward me, empty and slightly bloodshot. She clenched her lips together as if trying to hold back a cough. "I just have a bit of a fever. A little sleep and I'll be fine." "Like hell you will! We need to get you back to the brothel!" "No, I can't go back." "Come again?" "No, I don't have time to deal with their stupid morals right now." "I don't want to get anyone sick. They're doing their best." So she hadn't come out here for herself, but to protect the girls at the brothel. "And you call me stupid? Christ!" Not a single person there cared about themselves over Morgana's safety. Not the girls, and certainly not me. And that's another thing. Even though it is a brothel, everybody cares about each other like they're a bit of a family. Especially their care for Morgana herself. In that brothel, Morgana did have a family. A caring one. But she continued to insist I not bring her back. I bit my tongue, fighting back an urge to snap at her. I wanted to say something nice or reassuring, but I was too irritated by her usual self-sacrificing nonsense that I couldn't. "So, I can take you somewhere else, then, as long as it's not the brothel?" I lifted her into my arms, without permission, but it was an emergency. She would understand. Although in her feverish state, she didn't seem to understand much of anything right now. With Morgana in my arms, I hurried home. I laid her down in my bed, soaked an old rag in cold water, and placed it across her forehead. It was all I had, but it was better than nothing. "I'll be right back," I said, then ran out the door. Next, I went to the pub where I had the barmaid get me some fruit and other light foods. And while I was there, I told a few of my peacekeeper companions about what was happening, asking them to cover for me that afternoon. They laughed and teased, but all I was concerned about right now was getting Morgana better. Next, I made my way to the brothel. Maria was still asleep, so I woke her up and explained what was going on. Thankfully, having known each other our whole lives, it only took a couple of minutes to get everything through her half-asleep head. She let out an exaggerated sigh and then said, "God, that girl. She should know us better than that by now." On my way out, Maria gave me a few pieces of advice and a set of fresh sleepwear. With the clothes in hand, I rushed back home once more, the merciless summer sun pounding down on my sweaty back the entire time. When I made it back, Morgana's breathing was fast and shallow, her eyes clenched shut in pain. The rag on her forehead was already warm. I peeled it off, and she opened her eyes, apparently awake. "Can you eat anything?" She shook her head weakly. Then at least drink some water. If you don't have something, you're gonna sweat it all out and wither away and die. Not that there's much in that tiny body of yours to lose in the first place. I felt a pointed stare, but that was it. No witty retorts. It didn't look like she even had the energy to drink on her own. So I scooped some water into a cup and brought it to her lips. It took her a while to drink even half the small cup. Now, you need some rest. But only after you get out of that robe. It's drenched. Maria gave me some nightwear for you to use. You'll be much cooler in this. I held out the immaculate white gown for her to see. Clothes in the slums are always someone's hand-me-downs, usually several times over. Something this new was a rarity. I'm fine as I am, she said, turning her head away. Absolutely not! I snapped back. Just put this on, okay? Oh, I see. You're not comfortable changing with me in the room. All right, I'll be outside. Does that work? Oh, come on, say something. If you won't change yourself, I'll do it for you. You want me to rip that big, heavy thing off you myself? Do you? If you would, please. Yeah, I hear you. You'll do it yourself. What? Did she just ask me to do it for her? I want out of this, but I can barely move myself. Oh, right. Yeah, all right, fine. Well, since you asked so politely. My entire body suddenly froze up. I'd only said what I did because I was so certain she would tell me no. This was not part of the plan. The fever must have really gotten to her. Under any other circumstances, she would never agree to this. Morgana hated showing people her skin, which was one reason she wore that heavy black robe even in the summer, and kept her face hidden by that ridiculous hood. Keep your head, Jacopo. You're caring for a sick girl, nothing more. She's a child anyway. You're not so far lost that you would have inappropriate thoughts about a child, are you? Repeating the words in my head like a mantra, I began removing the robe. It was even wetter than it looked and weighed a ton. And realistically, she was wearing a black robe in a bright, sunny area. It would honestly, it's no wonder she didn't suffer heat stroke multiple times. Her hair was sticking to the back of her neck, too. I would probably need to comb that out when I was done. Probably try to, dry her hair a little bit, if you have a towel somewhere. My heart pounding at probably dangerous speeds, I set the robe on the floor beside the bed, doing everything in my power to look anywhere other than at her. I then pulled the gown down over her head, guiding her arms through the sleeves. But as hard as I tried, I couldn't completely avoid the sight of her pale white skin. Particularly her chest. But not for any uncouth reasons. It was the cross-shaped scar there that caught my eye. Scars covered Morgana's body from her time in Lord Barnier's captivity. And while the wounds themselves had healed, it was still a grisly sight. The deepest among them was a cross-shaped scar in the center of her chest, which seemed to embody the entire tragic story of her life. Yep. I don't even want to remind myself of those terrible blood banquets. Seeing it filled me with unspeakable sadness and helplessness. Not to mention deep shame at the base thoughts that had threatened to cross my mind in the moments before. I wished there was something, anything, I could do to show her that not everyone was out to hurt her, as much as the world may have made it seem so. Yanked back to my senses by the sound of her voice, I pulled the gown down the rest of the way in a panic. I was just making sure I got it on right. Absolutely nothing inappropriate, I swear, I said. That was perhaps the least convincing excuse imaginable. She looked me straight in the eye, then turned away. And then, in a voice as soft as a feather, she whispered, I'm sorry. You're sorry? For what? I don't understand you at all. Maybe she felt bad about imposing on me? Either way, she sure got meek when she wasn't feeling well, huh? I chuckled to myself. The only thing you need to concern yourself with right now is getting better. Then, when you are, you can tell me to go burn in hell for this, like the Morgana I know would. Don't apologize. Okay. See, this is what I'm talking about. I can't deal with you like this. I said with a sigh, picking the rope up off the floor and making my way toward the window. If I set it out in the sun, it'd probably be wearable again by tomorrow. Is there anything else you want from me? Believe it or not, I'm capable of showing kindness when someone's sick. So ask away. I'm at your service. Yeah, I figured as much. Me? Leave me. Right. You want time to rest in peace, I understand. Don't leave me. I stopped dead in my tracks and spun back to look at her. Had she really asked me to not leave her alone? Her? Morgana! I was pretty sure I hadn't misheard her. At least. Sure, I said uncertainly, then headed back towards the bed, taking a seat on the edge. The wooden frame creaked under the weight of a second body. What? Your face is red. Did I get you sick? No, of course not. I'm perfectly fine. That's good. Morgana's eyes were unfocused, like she was drifting between dream and reality. I doubted she grasped what was going on, or anything she had said, and by the time tomorrow came around, she would probably have forgotten everything, which was probably for the best. I didn't want her to remember me looking like this. I reached over and took Morgana's hand in mine. She didn't protest, and in fact seemed to help her relax, because less than a minute later she had drifted quietly off to sleep. The sight of her soft sleeping face in the sunlight was indescribably beautiful, no matter how hideous anyone else may have thought it. I remained there, her hand in mine, for a while longer, and as I said a little prayer, may I be the one to take these hands and guide them into the future. I'll say it again, like, Jacopo and Morgana's relationship. It is by far one of the more complex ones that it's kind of hard to describe. Like, I'm not entirely sure what I can really say about it. Let's just go ahead and go to a slice of sweet serenity of Days Long Lost 2. Oh, it's a continuation. I think. It felt like nightmare after nightmare. Dreams of my mother Oh, this is Morgana's perspective! Dreams of my mother abandoning me. Of nobles mocking me. Of that terrible lord drinking my blood. Of filthy men in the slums gagging at the sight of me. But no matter how many times they threatened to swallow me up, there was always a hand there holding me in place. It was a man's hand, large and strong but soft and gentle. It could only belong to one person. I slowly drifted back to reality. My head still hurt a little, but it wasn't as hard to breathe anymore, and I could see clearly again. Pale blue moonlight seeped into the room through the window. I pushed myself up in the bed. A little too hard, though. The weight I was used to being there was gone, causing me to misjudge the push and stumble. I looked down to find myself in a white robe I didn't recognize. It was light and breezy, and it felt nice on my skin. Lifting my arms up, the fabric made a pleasant rustling sound. My hair had always been let down, the braids undone, and... had also been let down, sorry. And the braids undone, and all of it brushed. I gripped my right hand shut, then loosened it again, repeating the action several times. It felt slightly warmer than the left, as if someone had been holding it while I slept. Looking around, I realized where I was. It's his home. I had been here about a month earlier, around the time of the Midsummer Festival, and the ceiling above me looked exactly the same as it did back then. Compared to the almost sickly sweet aroma of all the women in the brothel, it smelled almost earthly and rugged here. That alone was enough to tell me it was a man's home. What I didn't know, though, was why I was here. I'd woken up this morning feeling unwell, so I went to the graveyard to rest by the tree, but I couldn't remember anything after that. Oh, you're up. how are you feeling? There was another presence in the moonlit room. As it drew closer, its silhouette grew clearer. In the past, I would have braced myself for the sight of a man, no matter who, approaching me in the dark, but I was able to stay relatively calm now. The moon shining through the solitary window was the only source of light. Candles were a luxury most couldn't afford in the slums, and in the pale light I could see his face twisted into a frown. Not an angry frown, though, one of concern. I'd learned to tell the two apart in the 2.5 years since we'd met, though I would never admit to it. Gazing absently at him, a number of questions leapt to mind. Had he brought me here? Had he watched over me the whole night? Had he been the one holding my hand? Would you care to explain what I'm doing here? But the question that actually made it out surprised even me with how callous it sounded. Hey, you need to learn show some goddamn gratitude. You're here because you decided to drag your dumb, sick ass to the graveyard and pass out there out of some stupid, misguided attempt to protect the girls at the brothel. I brought you to my place so you didn't die out there in the heat. Oh. Let me give you a hint. 2 words. Rhymes with thank you. I never asked for your help. Christ! You couldn't be more impossible if you tried. What happened to the girl from this afternoon? What? Nothing. Don't worry about it. I tilted my head in confusion, and he clenched his lips and averted his gaze. I hoped I hadn't said or done anything in the few hours I'd lost. A mix of worry and humiliation grappled inside me, pulling me back and forth between wanting to ask and not wanting to know anything. Anyway, but before I could make a decision for myself, he changed the subject. At least, you've recovered enough to put that sharp tongue of yours back into action, he said with a smirk. I had no idea what to say. Clearly he had looked after me when I was unable to look after myself. For that he deserved thanks, but I couldn't actually put that into words. And even worse, I was afraid whatever I said next would only upset him more. You haven't eaten anything all day. You must be starving. I am not... Before I could finish the sentence, though, my stomach let out a deep rumble. My eyes went wide and I gave him a desperate look, and then dropped my gaze to my hands. I couldn't believe that had happened. My stomach growling in hunger like an ordinary girl. It was humiliating. I stared down at my clenched fists for what felt like an eternity, unable to bring myself up to look at him, when I heard a muffled snicker from above. I wanted to snap at him for laughing at me, but I couldn't even manage that. Come here. He grabbed a chair and placed it by the window. I knew it was only because that was the one source of light in the room, but still, I was hesitant to step out of the darkness without a hood to cover my face. I could see so much more of the world than usual. Standing in the moonlight, he was illuminated from head to toe, and I could even make out the details on his face. He was smiling gently, not smirking or glaring or frowning as I had expected. His eyes, the color of fallen leaves, narrowed just slightly. What's gotten into you? There was always a hint of derision in his smile. There was always a trace of contempt in his words. He was short-tempered and quick to shout. He was obsessed with logic until he was complaining about feelings. So why was he being so... None of that now. You're the worst. He hadn't done a thing wrong, and yet everything felt wrong. It wasn't playing fair for him only to be nice to me now. It was cowardly for him to only smile at me like that now. A kind of irritation I didn't know how to describe began pooling within me. Nothing was making sense anymore, and I didn't know who I could ask to explain it either. So it just built up and up and up, to the point that it was almost hard to breathe, to the point that I almost felt sick. As unflattering as it was to describe my own feelings that way, but it scared me, not knowing what any of it was. Would I ever have an answer? Would I ever have a name for this feeling? Would the day ever come that I could feel comfort in it? And would I even be me if it did? I certainly couldn't imagine myself there ever, with that kind of confidence. Smiling like him, being sociable like Maria or Jiren. Are you just going to sit there and stare off into space? Whatever. I always had my hood up and my head turned down, so I almost never had the chance to look at him so unobstructed. Which reminded me how much older than me he was. He was an adult and I was just a kid. He didn't have to look after me either, but he did for whatever reason. And who knew how long that would even last? He could very well go off and do something else with his life, somewhere far away before I figured anything out. So, I said. The thoughts just kept coming and coming, almost sending me into a panic. He frowned slightly, tilting his head, and every second I couldn't figure out what to say next, his frown deepened. But his patience never ran out. He stood there and waited. Which reminded me, once not long after we first met, when I still considered him a potential threat, he'd done the same thing. Waited for me to speak, despite not being a patient man at all. In 4 years. What? In 4 years, how old will you be? What? Can you do the math yourself? Anyway, I'll be 26 4 years from now. 26. Hearing the number put into perspective exactly how far ahead of me he was. By then, he could have a loving wife and children. And why wouldn't he? Those are people did at that phase of their lives. What will you be doing then? Hell if I know. What kind of question is that? I mean, I'd at least like to be done scraping by every day of my life by then. Another 4 years of this is more than I can take. Oh. What's gotten into you? He said with a sigh. I turned up to face him. Words danced on the tip of my tongue. If he could just wait for... no, 1 year. If he could just stay there, in this confined life he hated so much, not trying to go out into the world like he loved to talk about. 1 year was all I needed. That would be enough time. That would be enough time to make sense of myself. To convince myself I was a regular girl like anyone else. And to figure out what on earth I actually felt about him. I knew I would just be holding him back. Why should he care about accommodating the wishes of a hideous girl like me? But if he could just wait a year. Just 1 year. Morgana? All I had to do was say it, and it would take a huge weight off my shoulders. But I couldn't bring myself to put those thoughts into words. Not because I didn't want to, or because I was too embarrassed to, but because the act of asking for something still held so much weight for me. Are you still feeling under the weather? Is that it? Perhaps so. Damn. Then you'll want something light, I'm guessing. I got some fruit from the barmaid at the pub. He stepped over toward me, holding out his hand. It was large and bony, nothing like my own hand. And in it, he held an apple, which I accepted with both hands. He'd managed to get me new clothes and food, which I knew wasn't easy given our circumstances. And as much as he yelled about me thanking him, he never once tried to guilt me about everything he'd done for me. Not him, nor the girls at the brothel. Don't get too generous, I said, carrying the apple to my mouth. I have no way of paying you back. My help isn't an investment I'm looking for returns on. You know that perfectly well. Or you're starting to feel guilty. That's cute, he said with a chuckle. Instead of replying, I bit into the apple. Its sweet juices filled my mouth. If you want to pay me back, just remember to say something nice over my grave. I know you've got a soft spot for the dead. Sure. I giggled, holding the apple in front of my mouth so he couldn't see it. Apparently he still remembered the time I told him, if you want me to be nice to you, go die. But the truth was, I'd wanted to do something for him in life, in return, since even before then. And I hope you live a long life. That way I won't have to worry about showing you any kindness for many years. You're really against the idea of being nice to me, huh? He said, frowning. More than you could ever imagine. Christ, no mercy. But alright, fine. I'll live a long life. And so will you and Maria and Jiren and that dumbass Gratian and all our other friends. Right. I handed the half-eaten apple back to him, guessing he hadn't eaten for almost as long as me. And after a few moments of hesitation, he accepted it, taking a large bite out of the untouched side. I watched quietly. Some part of me is certain that we would have many more occasions just like this. And the sweet taste of the apple still lingering in my mouth, I whispered, to a long life. For all of us. You're just twisting the knife! You're just twisting the knife even harder. Oh my god, my heart can't handle this. Why do you do this to me, Fata Morgana? Why do you do this to me? Okay, I think we can do one more, and then in the next episode we will take care of the last 4, and then we can finally probably begin the reincarnation chapters. The Ghost of Rose Manor, The Ghost of Rose Manor. Hey there, ladies and gents and everything between. I'm your run-of-the-mill landscape painting, but you can call me Mr. Canvas. I'd like to talk about my time with the Rhodes family today. Back in the time of Hayden Rhodes, I hung in the first floor drawing room. The old man was rather fond of me, if I do say so myself.
This is the only piece of art left in the house when I bought it.
He liked to tell everyone. But once that big troublemaker of a painting showed up and his work started to fill the house, things got a little disagreeable for me there. He was a trend chaser, but that didn't really suit my style. So before long, I got moved off to an out-of-the-way corridor where I was subjected to some horrible mistreatment. Ugh, I tremble in my frame thinking about what that smarmy little child in her garishly filthy dress did to me that day. Of whom do I speak, you ask? Why, my great and terrible arch-nemesis, the young Nellie Rhodes, of course. Her brow furrowed and her lips pursed. The small one glared at me for a few moments before saying,
I've always hated this painting. It's so dreadfully old-fashioned.
Can you believe the gall of this girl? She then lifted me off the wall and said,
No one's going to miss this hideous thing anyway.
Now, I consider myself to have a pretty good handle on my wits, but you can bet I was sweating like a pig over her trying to throw me away. Which is when Nellie let out a little squeal and dropped me to the floor.
Ew, it's all wet and gross. Oh, dearest Mel, I need your help.
After a few moments, cowling to herself, Nellie scampered off, leaving me all alone with no way to get up. And just as I was unsure this would be the end of me, someone lifted me up off the floor. It was the white-haired girl. Oh, the soft touch of her hands made my heart skip a beat. And I mean, who wouldn't in my position? She looked so much like... Then, with a faint smile, she said,
Let's bring you somewhere safe.
And carried me, wrapped tight in her arms, to the second floor. She seemed to know where all the best nooks and crannies in the house were tucked away. After hanging me up somewhere and nice and out of the way, the white-haired girl said,
There, that should do it. I just couldn't bear to see such a lovely painting thrown away.
Oh, what a sweetheart she was. Nellie could have stood to learn a thing or two from her.
You look like a garden or perhaps a field somewhere. You're beautiful, and I'd love to see it in person someday.
Oh, girl, I'd have loved nothing more than to take you there myself. It was a lovely area for horseback riding, and the shade beneath the trees was perfect for a picnic. That's even where you... Whoops, no, wrong person. I seem to have mixed the white-haired girl up with someone else. I let out a chuckle no one could hear, and as I watched her walk away, I said a little prayer. May your life be filled with joy. He hadn't been allowed to have that much, so I hoped at least she, his spitting image, could. Oh my god. Again, another reason why Georges is like the best brother. Oh my god. My heart. I can't handle this. Okay. Alright, I think that's enough for right now. So let's summarize. We got to see a little bit of like Orlando and Pauline right before Pauline began her search for Yukimasa. Then you got to see both Jacopo and Morgana's perspectives of the days of that day whenever she got really, really sick, and he basically took her to his house to help her out. It was very interesting. I like being able to see more of, like, seeing how Morgana herself felt, because, I mean, for crying out loud, she's the witch that took control of the mansion and put everybody into terrible tragedies. So it's always good to kind of see, like, her perspective, not only before she became the witch, but also during, when we got that little moment when, I think it was definitely before Giselle came to the mansion, and it was both Michel and Morgana in the mansion during a Christmas moment. Like, as sorrowful as that moment was, and the meaning behind putting a wreath on a girl's head, and how there really didn't need to be any exchange of words. Like, just one look from Michel pretty much told Morgana, oh, that's why. Like, that right there was really, really, really good. And to top it all off, that sweet moment between Michel and Giselle. Oh, my heart could not handle it. This is, I swear, novels like this are going to be the death of me. Especially because of how much I love all of these characters.
Even me? Not you! Get out of my house!
But anyway, if you all like this, be sure to let me know. It looks like we're probably going to be able to finish the extra stories in the next episode. So we might, actually, depending on how short these are, we might even get to see a little bit of a glimpse of the actual reincarnation chapters, which means I get to hear what some of the voices sound like. But anyway, if you all like this, be sure to let me know. So thank you all so much for watching. And I will see all of you guys in the next video.